What's good, fam? Welcome back to another eerie edition of Whispers in the Fog. Before we unravel today's chilling mystery, Sherlock Holmes and the Choir in the Clockmaker's Tower, I want to hear from you. What brought a little light to your day, and where in the world are you tuning in from? Drop your stories in the comments. I'll be featuring some of them in the next episode. Now grab your drink, kill the lights, and lean in close. Because in Whispers in the Fog, nothing is ever quite what it seems. Chapter 1. A Dreadful Discovery. The fog rolled in thick over the narrow cobbled streets of Victorian London, wrapping the night in a blanket of damp chill that seemed to swallow sound itself. A sinister quiet pervaded the air, weighing heavily around the dimly lit gas lamps that flickered like ghosts in the mist. It was amidst this oppressive atmosphere that a dreadful discovery was unveiled. Dr. John Watson, having made his way from the warmth of 221B Baker Street, met the familiar figure of Sherlock Holmes at the entrance of an ivy-clad manor. "What is it?" he called out, his breath visible in the night air. "What has summoned you from your repose?" "Come, Watson, you shall see for yourself," Holmes replied, his voice tinged with urgency as he motioned for his companion to follow. The pair crossed the threshold into the decaying grandeur of the Hargrove estate, a place long shunned and rumored to be haunted by the tragedies of its former inhabitants. The scent of damp, wood and rot filled their nostrils as they traversed the creaky floorboards. "This house has borne witness to many misfortunes," Holmes remarked, his piercing gaze scanning the dimly lit parlor. "And tonight, it appears, is no exception." "Is it a murder? Has someone been killed?" Watson asked, his mind racing with possibilities. Holmes gestured to a corner where a set of fine china lay, shattered on the floor. Carefully inspecting the remnants, he knelt. "Not yet, my dear Watson, but the hint of violence lingers in the air." As he stood, Watson noticed a figure half hidden in the darkness, a woman shrouded in heavy mourning attire, frail and trembling. Her presence added an air of foreboding, and Holmes stepped forward. "What happened here?" "I am Clara Hargrove," she replied, her voice brittle as autumn leaves. "This was my family home, once filled with laughter. But now," she paused, glancing toward a doorway that led deeper into the house, "now it is a place of dread." Without another word, she led them into the dimly lit library where a fire flickered weakly in the hearth. Its warmth barely penetrated the weight of sorrow that enveloped the space. Huddled in an armchair was a man, his face pale and wan, a glass of brandy trembling between his fingers. Holmes scrutinized the room and found scattered pages strewn across the table, hastily abandoned manuscripts that spoke of the family's lineage, clearly a work of obsession. "What is the meaning of this?" Holmes demanded, picking up a page at random. In sudden recognition, his eyes glittered. "You are searching for your family's history, Miss Hargrove, yet your searches appear to have unearthed a bitter secret." Clara's features paled further. "A secret? What do you mean?" "There is a name here, one marked for the most painful reasons, a brother who never returned from the war." The ink smudged at the mention, he continued, holding up the page. "The remnants of your family's shame clamor for acknowledgement, do they not?" "Edgar," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He was my brother, and my dear mother's greatest sorrow." The weight of her confession hung between them. Holmes met her gaze, sharp and intuitive. "What troubles you most, Miss Hargrove? The loss itself, or the possibility that it may have not been simply war that claimed him?" She flinched. "There are whispers of betrayal and deceit within my family, the kind that leads to dark moments. My mother believed Edgar was murdered." Watson watched Holmes intensify his scrutiny of the room. "And did you, Miss Hargrove, ever think it possible that your own family conspired to cover such a truth?" "No, never!" she gasped, an affronted fire igniting in her eyes. Watson noted the quickness of her denial. It spoke volumes more than her words. "But if you know something, then now is the time to listen," said Holmes. "We must explore the manor systematically. You mentioned the house feels alive with whispers. What else might it have to reveal?" As Clara led them further into the depths of the home, the tension palpable, Watson could sense the presence of more than just memories. Shadows flickered against the walls, and they arrived at a closed door, untouched and older than the others. Clara hesitated, her hand hovering above the handle. "I have not gone in there. It is best left undisturbed." "Undisturbed truths serve only to fester," Holmes pressed, his voice compelling. There was heat in her hesitation, glint of something unrestrained. Before another moment could pass, he opened the door, pulling her into the darkness beyond. Inside, the room awaited, a musty attic, the scent of dust thick and cloying. They stepped over old trunks and discarded belongings, and there in the far corner lay a heavy trunk with iron clasps. Clara gasped sharply, a rush of recognition painted across her pale face. That trunk belonged to Edgar. With swift efficiency, Holmes produced a set of small tools from his overcoat pocket. "There may be answers within, if not remnants of your brother's past." As he squared himself before the trunk, Watson's eyes flitted about, and a glimmer caught his attention. A fragment of paper, pinned to a floorboard near the base of the trunk. He bent to retrieve it. "Holmes, look here," he began, holding the paper aloft. Suddenly, a sound echoed from behind them, like a whispering breath escaping a locked treasure of secrets. They both turned sharply, but the room remained. Still, begging the question of what might be lurking in the shadows. Holmes, his brow furrowed, turned back to the trunk. "The answers are nigh, or perhaps a trap has been laid for us. What lies within could change everything." Watson's heart raced. The surface of the paper between his fingers revealed a few telltale words that tasted of betrayal. A cryptic note that hinted at more than mere history. "What does it say?" Clara trembled, her earlier fervor fading as doubt clouded her features. With a grave look, Watson replied, "It appears our search has only just begun." And as Holmes, poised with determination, prepared to pry open the trunk, the creak of the floorboards echoed ominously, sealing their fate. The fog thickened outside, but within the heart of the Hargrove estate, the night was only just beginning, and the darkness seemed to whisper of more dreadful discoveries yet to come. Chapter 2. The Choir's Ghostly Lament. The flickering light of the gas lamps outside cast elongated shadows against the creaking timbers of the Hargrove estate, dancing uneasily as if echoing the turmoil within. The attic air was dense with forgotten memories, but just as Holmes prepared to pry open the heavy trunk, a low, haunting melody floated through the air, slipping beneath the weight of the fog. It was an otherworldly sound, distant yet clear, a choir's lament that sent a hush over the three companions. Watson, scarcely breathing, turned to Holmes, whose sharp gaze wandered from the trunk to the attic door. "What could that be?" Watson whispered, a knot tightening in his gut. Holmes's eyes narrowed, and he raised a finger, silencing Watson. "Listen closely, my friend. It is no ordinary song. Its echoes are tinged with sorrow, just as this house speaks of its own tragedies." Clara clutched her shawl tighter around her shoulders, transformation of her pale face reflecting fear. "The choir of St. Michael, they used to sing, 'At my brother's burial, they say the souls of the departed linger where they have unfinished business.' So the specter of Edgar Hargrove sings through the corridors of his family's past?" Holmes mused, a glint of intrigue lighting his eyes. Before she could respond, the melodic strains transformed into dissonant notes, twisting through the wooden beams as if protesting against the rightfully claimed serenity of the moment. "And yet," Holmes continued, "the atmosphere is laden with something more than mere remembrance. Tell me, Clara, when did you last hear this hymn?" "Not since my mother's death 2 years past," Clara replied hesitantly. "Oh, but why now?" "Curiously, time lamentations may reflect latent guilt or unresolved matters," Holmes remarked, his mind racing. "Let us proceed." As they descended into the house, the melody persisted, luring them deeper into the labyrinth of the manor's history. Each step echoed like the fading heartbeat of a house long bereaved. They navigated through rayless hallways until they found themselves in the grand parlor, another layer of the Hargrove estate's fractured past. Holmes studied the chamber's remnants, faded portraits of stoic ancestors, heavy drapery coated with dust, and of course the ghoulish air itself that seemed to absorb sound. The weight of sorrow seeps into the very fabric of this home, he muttered, his sharp eyes scanning. Let us unveil some truths lurking amid the shadows. Look at the fireplace, Watson exclaimed, pointing to a frayed tapestry, hanging above it adorned with a family crest. It looks out of place. Indeed, Holmes agreed. Family crests, unblemished by time, are often a reflection of familial pride, not grief. This tapestry, however, seems jarring. Perhaps it holds secrets beneath its weavings. His fingers deftly probed the fabric, and with a tug, several threads unraveled. Clara gasped. What are you doing? Unveiling what remains hidden, Miss Hargrove. Most clandestine matters are but threads woven into the tapestry of history. And at that moment, as the last of the threads surrendered, a hidden compartment appeared, revealing an ancient diary, bound in cracked leather. The pages were yellowed, yet the ink held its color, vibrant and alive. Holmes opened it, his eyes skimming the pages. This belonged to your late mother, Clara. He turned to Watson, a thrill electrifying the atmosphere. I believe we are standing at the precipice of comprehension. What does it say? Clara leaned closer, her voice laced with urgency. Here, she speaks of family secrets, a penmanship rich with despair. He read aloud. Edgar did speak of betrayal before he departed our realm, a betrayal cloaked in shadows. A haunting sentiment, wouldn't you say? What of the betrayal? Watson pressed, intrigue bubbling forth. The notion that his departure was no mere accident of fate? Holmes turned to Clara, whose face was now an open canvas of anxiety. Would it be prudent to assume your mother feared for your brother's life? Did she ever mention an entity within your family that might harbor ill will? Clara's eyes widened, a flicker of dread crossing her features. There were whispers. My mother had her suspicions about my father's brother, Lord Archibald Hargrove. He coveted the family estate, his ambitions tinged with darkness. She always believed he played a part in Edgar's absence. Lord Hargrove? A man bereft of morality, Holmes mused, forming the connections within his mind. Your uncle's aspirations might indeed lead him down a treacherous path, one that crosses the threshold of loyalty and treachery. Before Clara could respond, the melancholy hymn crescendoed once more, rising in pitch and urgency as it enveloped them. They startled at the sudden intensity, as if the very fabric of the air around them brimmed with a furious longing. Hold, my dear Miss Hargrove. Let us not be lured into a chase of shadows, however captivating. Holmes's keen instincts kicked in, refocusing on practicalities. Perhaps it is time we confront Lord Hargrove, rather than simply wallow in the morning of echoes. Will he know of Edgar? Clara asked, biting her lip, the tension heavy amidst the whispered sighs of the air. If he holds the truth, Holmes replied, his expression gravely serious, he may well know more than he has let on. And just as they glanced back to the diary, they heard a loud crash from below, the sound reverberating through the corridors with a thunderous growl. The echoes, it seemed, beckoned ever closer. What could it be? Watson asked, his heart racing, feeling the somber atmosphere shift palpably around them. Answers await, my friends, Holmes whispered, eyes glistening with the thrill of pursuit. But indeed, they will not come without a fight. As they hurried down the creaky staircase, the air thick with urgency, Holmes felt the weight of discovery heavy upon him. Each whispered truth pushed them closer to the heart of an ensnaring web of treachery and sorrow, even as the haunting melody transformed into a discordant din that hinted at an impending confrontation. What awaited them below was unknown, but one truth resonated clearly. The echoes of the past were not merely songs, they were warnings. The ghostly choir of lament beckoned them onward, weaving tales of dread yet to be uncovered, as the fog of deception enveloped the Hargrove estate more tightly than ever. Chapter 3. The Man Who Vanished. A sudden crash echoed through the Hargrove estate, reverberating off the damp-scented walls of the decrepit manor. Holmes barely paused in his swift descent as the sound clawed sharply at the tense air. Clara's distress was a palpable entity, a tremor in her voice matching the urgency of the moment. What could that be? She breathed, her features pale with apprehension. There's no time for speculation, Clara. We must explore. Holmes replied, his boots pounding against the creaky staircase, Watson following closely behind. Shadows danced in the flickering light of their hastily raised lantern, making the walls appear as if they too were alive, shrouded in the remnants of past sorrows. The parlor lay before them like a gaping maw, inviting but foreboding. As they stepped inside, the cacophony ceased, replaced by an unsettling silence that seemed to blanket the room. Clara's eyes flitted nervously around the dim chamber, her earlier resolve wavering. I cannot bear the spirits of this place, she stammered, bolstered by the relics of a haunted history. Holmes turned a sharp gaze toward her, sensing deeper fears beneath her surface dread. The shadows may linger, but they also offer answers. Was it mere coincidence, this when we begin to seek your brother's truth? Don't forget, Clara, the melody continues to weave its mystery. They moved carefully through the parlor, where the remnants of life long extinguished hung about like phantoms. A shattered vase lay forgotten on the floor, a small reminder of the tragedy that befell this household, a metaphor for fractured souls. It was beneath a portrait of Edgar, resplendent and youthful, that Holmes kneeled, his fingers brushing against the dust collecting at the base. Do not shun your family's past, Clara. Its shadows may expose more than just pain. What if your brother's disappearance reveals a pattern, a lingering enigma that can only be solved through understanding, the foundation of this very mystery? Watching him, Watson felt a tension growing, a sense that something beyond the tangible awaited them. Holmes straightened, steely focus forming on his countenance. Look closely, he said, indicating the portrait's frame. There's something peculiar, something almost deliberate about its position. Clara approached cautiously, her breath hitching. Holmes deftly adjusted the frame, revealing a tiny note, nearly invisible against the wooden backdrop. He scrutinized it, a confident smile tugging at the corner of his mouth as he raised it into the dim light. An anonymous missive. How puzzling. Yet this could provide us a crucial insight. His eyes sparkled with purpose as he read aloud. Tread softly, for beneath the surface of the beloved lies treachery unseen. Edgar was not the first to vanish, nor the last to suffer unjust pain. More layers to expose, Watson quipped, his brow furrowing. Whose treachery, Holmes? Edgar may have been the victim, but this note suggests a history of betrayal spanning generations. Holmes, pensive, folded the note carefully before tucking it into his coat. Indeed, Watson, this phantom of the past hints at a deeper conspiracy, a cycle of peril that encapsulates the Hargrove name. But let us not neglect Clara's perception. Your family's turmoil began long before Edgar's disappearance and may even arise from wishful ambition. You mean my uncle, Lord Archibald, Clara interjected, her voice quivering with a mix of indignation and fear. He sought my mother's inheritance with greedful intent, but could he be responsible for Edgar's downfall? Holmes nodded slowly, acknowledging her thoughts. You must consider the implications of your lineage, Clara. Given his ambitions and desire for power, he could very well harbor disdain toward Edgar, an obstacle in his path. And at this very moment, we find ourselves teetering on the edge of truth. Before they could delve deeper into speculation, the door swung open to reveal a figure standing in the threshold, shrouded much like the surrounding fog. Lord Archibald, his visage dark and imposing, stepped into the room, and for a moment, his presence consumed the space, rippling with dread. What brings you here, cousin? He said, coolly measuring both Clara and Holmes, ignoring Watson altogether. Looking for ghosts, perhaps? Or truths long evaded, Holmes replied, his tone like steel. Might we find answers regarding Edgar's absence? Archibald's expression hardened, then softened to a dispassionate veneer. That remains a grave matter, one best left to time, or the past itself. Holmes stepped closer. You offer yourself as a keeper of family history, but what if the very weight of that legacy hides a truth you would rather not acknowledge? A silent contest arose and Clara stepped in nervously, anxious to break the tension. I think I have a right to know. Archibald's features twisted slightly, his facade slipping as fear flashed over his countenance. There are some things better left buried, Clara. The Hargrove name carries more than just prestige. It carries blood, blood that stains too easily. Is that a warning, Lord Hargrove? Holmes questioned, his voice steady. Or a plea to protect the secret that shields you from blame? Edgar's disappearance could be a reflection not just on the family, but on you. Archibald straightened, an imperious look crossing his face as the resolve in his eyes hardened. You tread perilously close, my dear detective. Edgar was a fool, a man who believed in the honor of the family while betrayed by it instead. Then we must illuminate the darkness surrounding you, Holmes challenged, his determination unyielding, and confront whatever horror lies hidden behind facades and fears. You have much to gain or lose in revealing the truth. Before Archibald could respond, the mournful choir rose once more outside, a lament woven through the ether like a bell tolling in the ether for lost souls. Clara shuddered at the haunting sound. We can uncover the truth, but who will pay the price? A sudden crash from another room upstairs sent all hearts racing once more, as Archibald narrowed his eyes and stepped back. I have no more to say. With a swift motion, he turned and retreated, leaving a storm in his wake. Holmes and Watson exchanged glances, mildly unsettled that they had been so abruptly dismissed. Come, Clara, Holmes said, urgency embedding in his voice. This is not the end of our investigation, merely the beginning of a more sinister chapter. As they stepped forward into the parlor, Watson felt an unsettling shudder course through him, not from the encounter alone, but from the realization that between the notes left behind and the whispers of ghosts, the vanished memories of Edgar Hargrove were merely the tip of an iceberg steeped in familial treachery. Insidiously, they ascended toward the sounding echoes, feeling all the more convinced that more awaited them in the shadows of the Hargrove estate. Let us see what our next revelations shall yield, Holmes remarked, focusing on the looming corridor. It beckoned with veiled mysteries, and as the dreadful notes crescendoed, Watson felt the weight of encroaching darkness. They were not merely seeking shadows. They were not just chasing whispers. What lay behind the door at the end of that corridor might well unravel the fabric of the very family Clara held dear. With every step taken, the truth emerged closer, but even more treacherous paths unfurled ahead, leading into territories unknown. As the silence threatened to consume them, a sudden gasp escaped Clara's lips, her eyes widening at something beyond the threshold. Holmes! Look! She cried, pointing down the darkened corridor. In that moment, dread settled around them like a fog, and with it, they confronted the next unfolding mystery. Chapter 4. Shadows Among the Bellows. As the echoes of Clara's gasp reverberated along the dim corridor, a chill crawled up Sherlock Holmes's spine. Something was indeed amiss, and the oppressive atmosphere of the Hargrove estate thickened around them like a shroud. What is it, Clara? He urged, his voice steady as the shadows lengthened and shifted like dark specters. The young woman stood frozen, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination as they gazed down the corridor. There, at the end, a shadow moving. She pointed toward a small door at the far end, its edges darkened by years of dust and neglect. Holmes's gaze sharpened. The sudden movement in the fading light made an inexplicable thrill course through him. Without hesitation, he addressed Watson. We must investigate. Remain close. The three of them approached, the creaking floorboards protesting under their weight as they edged into the gloom. As they neared the door, the darkened figure momentarily vanished from sight, and Holmes paused, attuning his senses to the faintest sounds. A fluttering of fabric, a whisper of breath, or perhaps a trick of the mind, conjured by the pallor of the air. There is much to uncover within these walls, he muttered, but we must not allow ourselves to be misled by phantoms of uncertain origin. With a swift motion, he turned the tarnished knob, revealing a small, musty room cluttered with forgotten furnishings. Dust motes danced in the hazy light filtering through grimy windows. The atmosphere buzzed with unanswered questions, the space heavy with the weight of secrets long entombed. A former study, it seems, he noted, surveying the remnants of a bygone era. Books stacked precariously, a faded rug reminiscent of regal times, a tarnished mirror standing sentinel, and in the far corner, an old piano covered in dust. Holmes, Clara whispered, looking beyond the piano into shadowed recesses of the room. I felt something, perhaps a presence. A tremor of anxiety raced through her voice, reflective of the unsettling nature of their surroundings. Merely echoes of the past, my dear Clara, he replied, gently guiding her further. Inside. But let us remain vigilant. You discern the thread of emotion. I will untangle the program of events. As they scoured the study, Watson's eyes settled upon the piano. Holmes, look, someone has been here recently. He pointed to a scattering of sheet music strewn on the floor. Some crumpled, others fluttering slightly as if they had only just been disturbed. Holmes moved closer, the detective's mind racing through a cacophony of possibilities. Indeed, he said, crouching beside the eerie sheets, observing the handwriting. The penmanship bears a uniformity. The notes are simple and somber, but this title, Ode to a Vanished Heart, suggests a far deeper tale. He lifted a particularly crumpled piece, noting how it was inscribed with flourishes and curves, a distinctive style reflecting both longing and despair. Clara's interest piqued. Could it belong to Edgar, or perhaps a family member? It is possible, Holmes agreed, eyes narrowing, but I suspect something more convoluted. Edgar's melodic absence has invoked a tempest of emotions among those left behind. Suddenly, an unearthly sound arose from within the room, reverberating through the walls like a haunting refrain. The discordant notes played themselves, ethereal and disjointed, as if the instrument had been possessed by unseen hands. Clara clutched her chest, her face blanched with terror. It's the melody. What does it want from us? Calm yourself, Holmes commanded, his voice brimming with authority. We must confront the source of this symphony. With a precise maneuver, he approached the piano, placing his fingers gently upon the keys. As silence fell, he pressed down, producing a note that sparked a flicker of recognition within him. This is no mere phantom. Observe, Watson. The keys resonate in a peculiar pattern. They do not belong to an ordinary composition. It is a woven message, perhaps calling us toward the answers hidden elsewhere. As Clara exhaled shakily, her gaze fixed on Holmes, he directed his attention toward the room's other furnishings. A haphazard stack of letters caught his eye, speckled with dust and carelessly crammed into a drawer. He rifled through the brittle pages, squinting at the scrawled handwriting with practiced scrutiny. What do they say? Watson asked, his curiosity surging as he joined Holmes by the drawer. Primarily from one Damien C. to Edgar Hargrove, Holmes noted, flipping through the fragile leaves until one particular letter grasped his interest. Ah, here, it reads, your ambition threatens to veer toward unfathomable darkness. A warning should not be taken lightly. The vanishing of the bloodline will only serve to fulfill your very own curse. The words landed heavily in the room, palpable with dread. A threat veiled in concern, Clara said quietly. Do you think Edgar was in danger? Very likely, Holmes replied, a stony certainty resounding in his tone. This appears to weave the tapestry of familial treachery. And the invocation of a curse? Merely superstition or suggestion of something deeper? Amidst the bleak atmosphere, something slipped from the musical sheets, a small silver locket. Holmes bent to retrieve it, its polished surface catching the pale light, revealing an engraving on the back. To my beloved, ever in shadows. An urgent thrill coursed through him. May I surmise this is a token from someone dear to Edgar? Or perhaps from a figure entwined in these dark tales? Just as he pocketed the locket, a sudden crash echoed from the stairwell. The trio exchanged panicked looks. It was not the distance of echoes this time, but an impending sense of danger. Look! Clara's hand pointed back toward the threshold. A figure loomed in the doorway, the very essence of dread incarnate, shrouded in a fog of uncertainty. It was Lord Archibald, returning with a countenance darker than before, his lips twisted in a grimace that belied anger and trepidation. Clara, he rasped, his voice low and urgent. You shouldn't be here. You must leave now. Before Holmes could interject with a demand for clarity, another sound punctuated the tense atmosphere. a series of hurried footsteps approaching from the corridor, this time unfamiliar and ominous. Shadows conspired against them, and with Archibald poised at the threshold, a pressing darkness seemed to swell around the trio. "You may wrestle with shadows, but they are no match for the depths of the Hargrove estate," he threatened, the air quaking with unspoken animosities. "Leave while you still can." The chapter hung precariously, each breath troubled, heartbeats quickening with the encroaching mystery. What lay beyond the doorway? What truths remained shrouded within the very shadows they sought to unravel? The answers, it seemed, flickered just out of their grasp, lingering like ghosts amid the bellows of the crumbling manor, striving to ensnare them deeper into the impending darkness. Chapter 5. The Missing Will. The dim, retreating light of the evening sky seeped through the window panes, casting elongated shadows across the musty study of the Hargrove estate. A sudden, sharp sound, a crash followed by a guttural growl, reverberated down the corridor, drowning Clara's whimper and eliciting a startled gasp from Holmes. "Get behind me," he commanded, positioning himself as a barrier against whatever terror awaited beyond the doorway. As the figure of Lord Archibald loomed closer, his brow furrowed with genuine fear, sensing the ominous shift in the air. "You don't understand," he hissed, his voice barely above a whisper. "You must flee now. The things revealed tonight will not remain unpunished." Holmes's keen eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting that our inquiry into Edgar's fate is propelling us toward danger, Archibald? If so, you owe it to your late cousin and to Clara to reveal the truth." The atmosphere thickened with an unsettling blend of trepidation and anticipation, the murky depth of the Hargrove lineage now interspersed with a sense of urgency. From just beyond the door, hurried footsteps echoed, growing louder, drawing nearer, and compelling Holmes to take immediate action. "Watson, assist me," he uttered, a plan unfurling in his mind like a carefully penned note. With swift precision, Holmes beckoned the others toward the rear of the study, steering Clara and Watson toward an adjacent door concealed behind a worn tapestry. It creaked open into a narrow passage lined with cobwebs, the passage to a forgotten realm. "This might provide us a vantage point," he murmured, beckoning them into the cloistered darkness. Clara's eyes glimmered with both fear and resolve. "Will we be safe here?" Holmes steadied her with a firm but reassuring gaze. "For now we are cloaked in obscurity. We need to ascertain the intent behind those approaching feet and the weight of that shadowy threat." They edged into the passage, breathless with the palpable tension weaved between them. Holmes, directing their steps, led them deeper into the house's labyrinthine interior, calling forth a recollection of their surroundings. "Watson, who do you believe possesses the greatest interest in recuperating Edgar's estate? The man who calls himself Lord Hargrove? Archibald has long lingered as an unscrupulous rival in the family," Watson replied, his voice hushed, dark thoughts flitting across the recesses of his mind. "Ambition runs rampant, especially through the veins of those who believe their legacies are threatened." "Indeed," Holmes muttered contemplatively, his eyes keen as he recalled the clandestine whispers of their last encounter. "There is much he stands to gain, but does he hide a more sinister motive within his facade of greed? Perhaps there remains another matter that beckons our attention." As they reached the end of the passage, the noise surged outside the study, a familiar voice ringing above the confusion. A second figure was confronting Lord Archibald. The trio halted, straining to hear the muffled conversation. "You were to handle it discreetly," a voice scolded harshly. Clara's breath caught as she recognized it, the kindred notes of Damien C. "I will resolve this, rest assured," Archibald retorted, a tinge of desperation threading through his tone. "But first we must eliminate any inconvenient witnesses." Holmes frowned. "Eliminate?" he whispered, his mind racing. "It seems our suspicions regarding Edgar's impending danger hold more weight than we presumed." "I want to leave," Clara shifted impatiently, anxiety creeping its way beneath her skin. "Please, Holmes, we cannot involve ourselves any further in this tangled web." Before he could respond, the grasp of icy dread tightened as a distant crash resonated through the hall, shattering the oppressive silence. Clara shivered, gripping onto Watson's arm as panic rippled through the air. "What now?" In an unforeseen shift, Holmes recalled the scattering of letters scribbled in the study, one particularly laden with grave implications. "We need that missing will." "Missing will?" Watson echoed. "Surely Edgar had a will. Was it not among his belongings?" Holmes's gaze sharpened as the fragments of their previous investigation coalesced. That would explain the urgency of Archibald's confrontation with Damien. A will, if not recovered, could dismantle the Hargrove estate's fabric, and they will go to any lengths to keep their secrets hidden. "They'll fight to the death?" Clara asked, eyes widened. Holmes exhaled sharply. "There lies a grave possibility. We must retrieve it before it is consumed by the very shadows we've begun to unravel." With renewed determination, they began retracing their steps toward the study, hearts hammering, each footfall a testament to the stakes at hand. Yet as they neared the door, it creaked open suddenly, darkness pouring forth to unveil yet another surprise. Lord Archibald, a tempest brewing in his eyes, yet now surprisingly alone. "Hallucinations from the past?" he jeered, his bravado fraying. "Or something more profound has filled this estate with specters? Stay away from Edgar's things." Holmes stepped forward, his voice low and commanding. "We merely seek the truth, Archibald. If you impose corners around this inquiry, know it will only lead you deeper into your own entrapments." "Your brilliance will not matter in the face of destiny," Archibald hissed, sneering as he edged away. The tension electrified the air, a breathless pause woven with silence. That organic unease began to burgeon beneath the surface. Suddenly, Clara's hand slipped from Watson's grasp as she realized they were boxed in. A singular path loomed ahead toward the damp, dusty study, now warped with echoes of violence. "Wait," Clara whispered urgently, eyes fixating on a glint emerging from a wider shard of light that broke through the shadows of the study behind Archibald, one that certainly didn't belong. "Look!" Amid the echoes, a familiar silhouette flickered at the edge of the light. An old book, its worn cover revealing the unmistakable insignia of the Hargrove family crest, lay upon the floor, prominently affixed. A sprawl of parchment slipped free from its grasp, dancing toward the floorboards, unraveled, the unmistakable edge of a will peeking forth. Without a breath, Archibald lunged, echoing fury etched into his features as the tension ignited between them. "No, you can't!" But before anyone could react, the door, abruptly shattered open, joined by the entrance of menacing figures cloaked in darkness, emerging to seal their fate. In that moment, as time suspended in an unsettling tableau, all present stood on the precipice of revelation or ruin. The very fate of the Hargrove lineage awaited them, a secret straining against its confines like a taut string ready to snap. "Prepare yourselves. This fight is far from over," Holmes intoned, eyes glistening with resolve as fear intermingled with the thrill of the chase. As the gust of turbulent energy swirled through the study, Clara's heart thundered in sync with that unseen verdict, the missing piece of the Hargrove legacy finally arriving in their grasp as the weight of uncertainty fueled every frantic breath. What awaited them? Truth or darkness? The veil lifted, but the coming storm boded fierce, drawing them ever deeper into the ominous curl of destiny's clutch. Chapter 6. A Clue in the Chimes. The fog enveloped Baker Street like a suffocating shroud, blurring the outlines of the familiar homes and dampening the cacophony of London. Holmes stood at the window, an ominous gravity in his posture as he fixed his gaze upon the swirling mists outside. The recalling echoes of the Hargrove estate and the threats they had encountered clung to his thoughts like persistent shadows. "Holmes," Watson began, although Holmes held a finger to his lips, dismissing any surplus chatter. The hushed environment only heightened the damp chill against their skin, although the detective's eyes sparked with fervor. With an eerie twinkle in his gaze, he turned abruptly, the aura of untangling a complex riddle pouring from him like chai from a kettle. "Something has unfurled beyond our immediate grasp, Watson," he declared, motioning for Watson to approach. As if summoned by the note of his voice, a tremor of urgency enveloped the room. "We have explored a mansion steeped in sinister secrets, yet the essential truths lie shrouded within the very horror awaiting us. Would it not suffice to consider revisiting the Hargrove estate then? Perhaps we could corner Archibald and that unseemly chap? Damien? Watson's brows knit in worry, his voice turning gravely serious. No, my dear fellow, Holmes countered, pursing his lips in thought. We must first revisit the scene of the chimes, the town hall clock near the manor, where sound and silence entwine. We may discern a signal lost amidst the chaos. A sudden gust of wind battered the window, and Holmes's certainty solidified. I am convinced the will is linked to this mystery, possibly through a concealed communication within the clockwork itself. Do you suggest someone has hidden it within the gears? Watson asked, a trace of skepticism dissipating in the air, though he could hardly dismiss the notion entirely. Precisely, let us make haste. Holmes's words prompted urgency. They donned their overcoats, and with that, Holmes seized his Watson. He never missed a chance to illuminate the tangled threads of a case. As they strode through the claustrophobic streets of London, the feeling of trepidation intensified. Shadows played tricks on the mind with every flickering gaslight, each corner veiled in uncertainty. They navigated through the damp, narrow alleyways that led them to the stately town hall, where the towering clock stood sentinel against the creeping fog. Ah, the grand timepiece, Holmes mused, gazing upward at the ancient structure, its clock face, shrouded in mist, yet unwavering in its purpose. The tolling chimes echoed across the eerily quiet square, lending a sense of anticipation to the evening. Watson, observe how the chimes speak. Every stroke is laden with history, every echo potentially concealing the clues to this treachery. Surely the chimes are not mere sound, Watson remarked, his eyes darting between the clock and his friend. But what secrets could reside here? Holmes ambled closer, his sharp deduction sharpening. I envision a communication that intertwines with Edgar Hargrove's demise, a clue hidden within the matrix of gears. Witness how the pendulum sways. It carries the weight of momentous inspiration. The curiosity gripped Watson, compelling him to assist. They approached the base of the clock tower. Holmes swiftly set to work, navigating the creaky wooden steps leading to the viewing platform. With practiced patience, Holmes peered inside the belly of the clock, an intricate labyrinth of ticking machinery. The air felt electric. The world outside them ceased to exist as they conjured meaning from the otherwise monotonous device. Eagerly, Watson followed the detective's every command, eyes wide with anticipation. Here, look closely, Holmes said, pointing to an ornate engraving on a long, narrow cogwheel. It depicts the Hargrove crest intertwined with a stylized musical note. Could it be connected to the piano, then? Watson echoed, raising an eyebrow, fast-tracking through his thoughts. Indeed, music remains the key to unlocking communication. Yet we have lost touch with the context, Holmes murmured, focused intently on the engraving. There must lie a sequence concealed that aligns with the chimes. Sometimes deciphering melody can provide insight into our very own discord. The bells chimed. The cadence resonated like the flutter of haunted wings. Suddenly, a shiver raced down Holmes's spine as he wrestled fragmented memories of Edgar's letters. Damien referred to ambition and darkness, he breathed. What if the will contained terms suitable for manipulating the estate's succession? Watson straightened. Holmes, do you gauge that Edgar foresaw his own peril? That he would have placed his will within a place of warning, something both personal and public? Before he could delve further, an unexpected noise pierced the air. Footsteps echoing from the stairwell below, the hurried shuffle of shoes against timber. Holmes exchanged a knowing glance with Watson, their hearts quickening. Hide, Holmes declared as the footsteps grew louder, a looming presence sharpening into view. The door swung open, and a shadowy figure crept onto the platform. Lord Archibald. Ritualistic rage flickered in his eyes, breathing justification into his very demeanor. I suspected you'd find your way here, he sneered. You should have left well enough alone. In a flash, Holmes glanced at Watson, detecting a small metallic glint within Archibald's pocket. It was a delicate silver locket, identical to the one they had discovered at the Hargrove estate. Your possession, Holmes said steadily, the detective's brow furrowing in realization. But this one possesses the engraving, as if it is a response to our inquiries. Archibald, caught off guard, shifted uncomfortably. Drop this folly. You have no idea what powers you are meddling with. Then perhaps you might enlighten us before we unearth whatever darkness you harbor, Holmes challenged, stepping forward with an unshakable resolve. A tense silence hung between them, brimming with unspoken threats and hidden grief. With one instinctive motion, Archibald crashed the clock handle, a tumultuous din rattling through the gears. The very clock struck, but instead of ringing clear, a series of offbeat notes echoed through the air, generating an unsettling dissonance amidst the chimes, perhaps a key distorted amidst a melody lost in the shadows. Whatever dreadful scheme you've constructed, it may crumble with the truth, Holmes warned, eyes narrowing in determination. In an act of desperation, Archibald lunged forward. But as swift as his movement came, Holmes had seized the locket, exposing not only the truth, but a vital clue hidden within its grip. Here lies the blueprint to the chimes, Holmes declared, holding it high, just as a rumble reverberated from below. With frantic breaths, they realized a series of feet stormed toward their location, sealing their fate as the chimes fell. Silent, the pulse of the clock stilled. Shadows danced along the walls and the revelation shifted dramatically, the darkness whispering secrets that escaped the veneer of light. With a cataclysmic urgency, Holmes and Watson understood they now stood on the precipice, not just of fate, but of destiny itself. One final clue yearning to surface as they scrambled toward an unraveling truth, poised for an insurmountable confrontation. What awaited them remained veiled within the fog, and the thrill of untangling amidst labyrinthine shadows loomed ever closer. Chapter 7. Voices from the Beyond. The air crackled with tension as Holmes and Watson crouched behind the clock mechanism on the tower's platform. Lord Archibald's desperate actions echoed ominously in the confined space, and the sound of rapid boots clattering up the stairs sent chills racing through their spines. The clock's relentless ticking mingled with their pounding hearts, a droll reminder that time was not on their side. Holmes, it appears our uninvited guest has lost his temper, Watson whispered, glancing at his partner, who remained poised, eyes locked onto Archibald. Indeed, Watson. Yet despite the rising stakes, the key to unraveling this mystery lies closer than we think, Holmes replied, his mind whirring through a labyrinth of deductions. The shadows played upon Archibald's face like fleeting phantoms as he grasped at the clock's handle, its urgent rhythm a sinister backdrop. With a defiant glare, Archibald pointed toward them. You think you're clever, Holmes? But your meddling will lead only to ruin. You stand beneath the very ticking heart of Hargrove's legacy, he spat, each word laced with venom. Your recklessness betrays your desperation, Archibald, Holmes countered, unfazed by the looming threat. You orchestrated a facade steeped in greed, yet truth remains unfurling like clockwork before us. All we need do is listen closely. In that moment, a sudden realization swept over Holmes. The dissonance. It wasn't just a chaotic clattering, it was a message, a lament of what remains unspoken, he said, stepping back as he sought to decode the correlation between sound and secrets, the intertwined motives shaking in the air like the bellows of an organ. What do you mean? Watson questioned, brow furrowing. The engraved musical note, Holmes breathed, recalling how it hinted at something deeper hidden within the Hargrove estate's clockwork. Perhaps Edgar Hargrove embedded a message, in the cadence, a pulse akin to a heartbeat, demanding to be heard. Before Watson could respond, the staircase echoed with the finality of heavy footsteps. Panic flashed in Archibald's eyes, and he swayed, looking for an escape. This is not over, Holmes, he declared, retreating toward the stand of the clock. With a swift move, Archibald yanked open a hatch revealed by the elaborate gears, causing a series of cascading notes to resonate ominously in the air, in unstable harmony. If truth is a melody, let it be one of destruction. Time seemed to slow as Holmes lunged forward, his intuition igniting an urgency to uncover the truth before it disappeared into the ether. You cannot silence the truth, Archibald, he shouted, his voice resonating with defiance. And then just as he reached for Archibald, the figure vanished within the festering shadows, his escape exacerbated by the tolling rattle of the clock. Yet something glimmered where he had stood, something small and silver nestled in the broken light. As the last echoes of Archibald's threats faded to silence, Holmes grasped the locket, fingers trembling with anticipation. The distinct image of the Hargrove crest glimmered against the murky backdrop, its brilliance suggesting the remnants of secrets it might still hold. "What lies within this locket holds the key to our unraveling mystery, Watson," he murmured, suddenly invigorated. Through the thin layer of glass, Watson detected a folded note. Holmes deftly pried it from the locket and flattened it against the wall, illuminating the carefully penned words with the flickering gaslight of the lantern. "To my dearest Clara, if ever shadows close in upon us, remember the truth finds its voice in the silence of the forgotten." "Silent echoes," Watson murmured, caught momentarily by the haunting sentiment. "Do you reckon he meant the chimes? The bells carry the memories and voices of those long past?" "Precisely," Holmes exclaimed, excitement igniting in his eyes. In Edgar's final moments, he deciphered a means to communicate through the life force of the manor. "Even the clock is an echo of times long gone." The words faded into the distance as reverberations struck anew. They were not alone. The delicate whisper of footsteps stormed into the chamber, and moments later, a figure emerged from the shadows. "Holmes! Watson!" It was Clara, her voice ringing with urgency, every note steeped in palpable dread. "Help me! Everyone is in danger! Schwa the estate! There's been—" A loud crash thundered through the air, cutting Clara's words short. The clock shuddered in response, the gears grinding ominously, heralding an ongoing ride of chaos. "Clara!" Watson rushed forward, concern knitting his brow. "What has happened?" "They found the locket!" she yelled, desperation spilling from her. "Damien is on the warpath. He means to—" But her words drowned beneath the cascading chimes, rapidly accelerating as time grew unrestricted. The clockwork revolted, emitting twisted notes that clashed in disarray, drowning her voice in a cacophony of chaos. "Get back!" Holmes cried, instinctively pulling Clara toward the doorway. The door flew open, and in charged Damien, a figure cloaked in menace, face twisted in fury. "You dare disturb what belongs to the Hargroves?" he roared, the weight of his ambition simmering in the air. "Step aside, Damien. Leave while you still can," Holmes warned, though the tension stretched like a taut thread, poised to snap at any moment. But before he could spring into action, the ropes of darkness seemed to stir. The air thickened as the clock began to resonate a haunting melody, wisps of voices chiming from the past, echoing through time itself. The opposing forces collided, truth, ambition, and spectral reverberations, clashing in a volatile twist. Holmes felt the hammer of fate pulse within the furious ballet of shadows encroaching upon them, a dissonance encircled by questions untold. In that moment, the clock's tattered whispers held the key, a narrative swelling to surface, clamoring silently for their unyielding scrutiny. As the ensemble of confusion grew louder, Holmes turned to Clara and Watson, his gaze piercing into both their souls. "There lies a voice among the shadows, a truth that can unravel everything. We must not succumb." And as the final melody echoed, a component fell from the clockwork, spinning, glistening in the gaslight. Holmes reached forth with a fierce grasp, the air thick with the scent of impending revelation. This truth, it beckoned, eager to shift the very underpinnings of the Hargrove legacy. The next clue lay poised to unfurl, veiled in the very fog that enveloped London, promising answers long buried in the call of the ancestral shadows. With the clock's chimes fading and darkness drawing nearer, they stood on the cusp of revelation, a battle for the truth, not only of Edgar's legacy, but of their very lives, echoing forward as the secrets loomed their way into light. Chapter 8. The Letter Alarm. The streets of London were shrouded in a blanket of fog, the gaslight flickering like transient ghosts in the eerie twilight. Holmes and Watson skirted through the remnants of the night, the unease that engulfed the clock tower still echoing within them. As they traversed the narrow lanes, a sudden sound pierced the air, a distant clamor, a cascade of books, or some fragile ceramic shattering against stone echoed from an alley nearby. Holmes, that sounded ominous, Watson remarked, instinctively moving toward the source. Shall we investigate? Indeed, let us hurry. Every fragment matters, especially tonight, Holmes replied, his eyes narrowed with focus as they pushed through the ghostly mist. They arrived at the scene, where overturned crates lay strewn across the damp cobblestones, and the remnants of a letter fluttered against the brick wall, illuminated by the flickering light. Look, exclaimed Watson, stepping closer to the letter, that had evidently been ripped from its envelope. The ink was still fresh, the hurried scrawl barely legible. He knelt down, gingerly lifting the sodden paper, revealing detached fragments of a potentially damning revelation. Holmes's keen gaze latched onto the writing, deciphering the urgency in its strokes. This appears to be correspondence from Edgar Hargrove to Clara. He must have sensed a threat, he surmised. Listen to this. The inheritance barkens with claws. It seems Hargrove was trying to warn her. Claws? Watson echoed, his brow furrowing. What do you suppose he meant? An inference to danger lurking closer than imagined. Perhaps a metaphor for Lord Archibald's intent, Holmes replied. He traced the edges of the torn letter, his mind racing as pieces began colliding together like gears in a timepiece. If Edgar feared for his life, then more than one person must have known. The weight of their discovery sunk in, revealing a tangled web. The implications were palpable, yet unanswered questions swirled like the fog around them. Where's Clara? Watson asked urgently, recalling her desperate plea just before chaos erupted at the clock tower. She could be in peril, and it's our duty to protect her. Quickly, Watson. Back to the Hargrove estate, Holmes declared, determination igniting in his eyes. As they retraced their steps, the fog seemed to thicken, distorting familiar paths into an unrecognizable maze. Entering the estate through the grand entrance, they found every corridor resonating with ominous silence, the air heavy with foreboding. They ascended the staircase 2 steps at a time, intent upon seeking out Clara and unraveling the twisted designs of her fate. Holmes! A shrill voice pierced the hushed atmosphere. Clara stood at the threshold of her chamber, her face pale as moonlight, eyes wide with fear. Thank heavens you're here. Clara, what has happened? Holmes demanded, instinctively moving toward her. She moved aside, allowing them entry. It's Damien. He's ransacked my belongings, she stammered, glancing nervously toward the scattered debris on her floor. He believes I possess Edgar's will, but I know nothing of it. Which means he suspects you, Holmes pondered, surveying the wreckage. What else has he done? He sought to intimidate me and convince me of my folly, she replied breathlessly, panic lacing her voice. He threatened nonsense about piercing the family legacy. It's all so unclear. Holmes's sharp eyes searched her distressed countenance. Clara, tell me, did you find anything unusual amongst your belongings? Perhaps a letter? Only this. She reached for a small velvet pouch hanging around her neck, opening it to reveal a solitary key. Edgar entrusted this to me, saying it would unlock something of value within the estate. An astute measure from Edgar, Holmes complimented, excitement coursing through him as the pieces interlocked further. We must explore the library. The secrets therein. I am certain of it. As they made their way, the shadows flickered ominously, the sense of impending doom the only sound guiding their descent into the hidden recesses of the manor. Once in the library, Holmes approached the grand desk, where a massive tomed volume lay. The room itself felt sacred, as if holding its breath, waiting for life's next punctuation. Watson, he remarked, pulling out the large volume, it would be wise to examine the contents of Edgar's letters that were preserved. Here, if there are financial records hidden, then they could lead us straight to his will. After a few tense moments shuffling through the pages, one letter slipped loose and fluttered to the floor. Its distinctive ink was almost smudged but readable, reading from Edgar's calm tone a warning addressed to Clara. The shadows conspire within, yet truth is etched in the sounds of forgotten notes. Beware the claws. Holmes's eyes glinted with realization. Edgar was warning us once more, entwining his fear with those melodies. The estate itself is alive with echoes. These letters might just lead us toward a vault hidden in sound. Each note holds a clue. Then the clock has much more to reveal, Watson concluded. We must act quickly before more damage is done. Indeed. But first, let us ensure that Clara is safeguarded, Holmes directed, eyes darting cautiously to the door. They moved together, but as they crossed the threshold, a loud crash resonated from the adjacent room. The door flew, open to reveal Damien, brandishing a bludgeoning candlestick. No further, Holmes. I shall not squander my legacy upon your inquiries, he screamed, rage igniting in his eyes. Bloody chaos erupted. Holmes immediately thrust himself before Clara, eyes flaring with defiance, while Watson swiftly grabbed a nearby chair, ready to fend off the assault. Damien, you do not fathom the depths to which you sink, Holmes shouted, unyielding. Enough, Damien hollered, his face contorted with greed and malice. You've both meddled in affairs not meant for you, and now the truth shall bury itself in shadows. But just as the confrontation reached an unbearable climax, the haunting chime of the clock resonated ominously, and something fell from the mantel, an ornate music box, spinning itself into view. The air thickened as the melody enchanted by the estate rang out, notes curling around them like tendrils of smoke. Holmes, the box, it could contain Edgar's will, Watson exclaimed amidst the confusion swirling around them like the fog outside. Desperation made each beat of their hearts echo loudly in the room, stirring their curiosity and trepidation alike. At that moment, Clara's eyes widened, her breath caught in disbelief. It cannot be. The music box. It was my mother's. Mothers often hold keys to our past, Holmes replied, all three sets of eyes locked on the box as it began to unfurl a devastating narrative of truths long hidden. The stakes had never been higher, the clock chiming ominously into their reality. Time itself grew more precious as tension spooled, and truths whispered were about to arise from the shadows. With one swift motion, Holmes grasped the music box, igniting all the mysteries entwining them. The final revelation rested precariously upon the precipice of discovery. A treasure trove of secrets hid behind the melody, concealed by fog yet stirringly close. Would they uncover the peril that awaited their lives? The mysterious charm of the Hargrove legacy tightened around their fates, drawing them forward into a darkened horizon where answers awaited, hidden within a melancholic refrain. Chapter 9. The Final Performance. A sudden crack of thunder echoed across the fog-laden streets of London, startling the thin veil of evening silence as if warning of the tumult that lay ahead. In the dim light outside the Hargrove estate, shadows danced on the cobblestones, whispering secrets as Holmes, Watson, and Clara stood before the ornate music box, its haunting melody receding into an eerie stillness. The air buzzed with anticipation, the ticks of the clock echoing like distant drums in a funeral procession. Holmes turned the music box in his hands, examining its intricate carvings, each representing a fleeting moment of joy, now bound to the shroud of impending doom. Watson, there's more to this box than mere nostalgia, he declared, his piercing gaze scanning the dim interior of the library. I suspect it conceals the answers we seek. Clara's hand trembled as it hovered near the delicate ornamentation. Edgar would often play his mother's tunes when he was anxious. It soothed him, she confessed, a tear pooling in her eye. But the memories have turned to ash in light of recent events. A muffled cry from the far end of the library pulled them from their reveries. Not again, Clara gasped, her face paling as the realization washed over her. Damien! Holmes surged toward the sound, followed closely by Watson and Clara, whose fear seemed to envelop them like the encroaching fog. They found Damien cornered in the study, grappling with a figure concealed in shadows. The fierce tussle sent books crashing to the floor, spines snapping as pages scattered like leaves in a tempest. Release him, Holmes commanded, his voice slicing through the chaos, his intense gaze fixed on the darkened assailant, a silhouette formed by shadows and malice. Run! Shouted the figure, scuttling toward the door, but Damien's grip tightened, pulling the assailant backward. In the chaos, a glint of silver shone beneath beams of gaslight. Holmes instinctively trained his focus on the object. "Stop!" he shouted, launching himself toward the tussling pair. But the moment he turned, the assailant, a woman with dark hair cascading like a stormy tide, tore herself from Damien's grasp and bolted toward a hidden exit, her retreating figure swallowed by the encroaching darkness. "Holmes! The medallion!" Watson exclaimed, pointing towards the floor where the silver object lay, an ornate badge emblazoned with the crest of the Hargrove family. "It must belong to Edgar." Holmes scooped it up, scrutinizing the patterns etched into the metal. "Alas, there's more to Edgar's fate than we've yet unraveled. It's as if the essence of the estate possesses its very inhabitants." His voice lifted in fervor. "And who, I wonder, was the woman fleeing in the shadows?" Clara had turned ghostly pale, trembling uncontrollably. I've seen her. She used to come to the estate occasionally, just glimpses in the corners of my memory." "Enough to recall a name?" Holmes urged, linking her recollections to their tangle of mysteries. Victoria Albright," she stuttered, her eyes wide with realization. "She was Edgar's confidant. My brother despised her. Ambition springs eternal. It seems as if the Hargroves have a tendency to sow conflict even among their own kin," Watson interjected, piecing together the fraying threads. "What motive would she hold?" "Knowledge, my dear Watson. Knowledge of the depths to which Edgar had sunk. She could be an invaluable ally, or a poisoned chalice," Holmes said, peering beyond the threshold into darkness, the flickering lantern casting shadows on his resolute features. "We must uncover her intentions before she slips through our fingers again." Shaking off the lingering anxiety, Holmes motioned for Clara to follow him, his finely tuned instincts igniting like a spark. "We'll visit her this night. Knowledge shared only brings us closer to the truth." The trio emerged into the fog-drenched streets, footsteps muffled by the clamoring heartbeat of London. Determination propelled them through the damp lanes. Clara's voice trembled as she broke the silence. What if she knows something of Edgar's will, or the dangers surrounding it? Then it would be incumbent upon us to extract every last detail from her before Damien can apprehend her again, Holmes replied, unwavering. As Clara led them toward the direction she recalled. An unsettling sense of foreboding lingered in the air, the lantern light casting eerie shadows of their fleeting figures against grimy brick walls. It was almost as if the estate murmured secrets of its own, echoing their haste. They arrived at a rundown boarding house, its exterior a ghostly visage of days long gone. An aged door creaked open, revealing Victoria Albright, her figure draped in a faded shawl, eyes filled with both fear and recognition. "Clara, Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she stammered, glancing nervously towards the shadowed corridors of the building. You shouldn't be here." Holmes stepped forward, his presence commanding yet gentle. "Victoria, we know Edgar's legacy is entangled with yours, as are the shadows stalking the Hargrove name. We mean to help you, but only if you face me with honesty. Time is of the essence, and secrets can be lethal." Tension crackled in the night air, each unspoken word simmering. As lights flickered in nearby windows, Clara clutched the edges of her shawl, uncertainty flooding her features as she discerned their resolve. "Damien," Victoria whispered, her breath shaky, "he intends to use Edgar's past against us, to divert suspicion away from himself." The lights beyond swirled, an unnatural wind swirling with their breath. Holmes's eyes glimmered with urgency, piecing together an intricate tapestry of deceit. "What does he seek to hide?" Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial tone, and their surroundings felt suddenly hostile. "The truth lies in the music, the legacy of the manor. He believes if he controls it, he can control us all." A piercing scream echoed in the night, disrupting their concentration. Holmes's heart raced as he instinctively turned toward the source, a shadow sweeping toward them from the depths of darkness. A sinister figure emerging and brandishing a familiar candlestick above his head. "Enough of riddles," Damien roared, his face contorted with fury. "You meddle in affairs better left as shadows." Holmes's mind raced, understanding now that every piece, every melody converged to a genesis of revelations. "Clara, Watson! To the clock!" he yelled, realizing that the final performance of this tangled web was about to unfold, thrusting them deep into the heart of darkness that sought to silence their pursuit of truth. As they sprinted toward the Hargrove estate, Holmes knew that time was running thin, the clock's chimes appearing closer than ever as the shadows closed in. Behind him, Damien's furious footsteps echoed like thunder in a night steeped in anticipation. The game had shifted. The stakes had never been higher. Would the final performance bring resolution or chaos? Only time, and the secrets of Hargrove, would reveal the next act. Chapter 10. The Clock Strikes. As the echoes of their hurried footsteps bounced off the damp cobblestones, Holmes felt the oppressive weight of the fog coiling around them, wrapping them in a shroud of uncertainty. The night seemed intent on swallowing them whole, every shadow a potential hiding place for treachery. "We must reach the estate before Damien does," he urged, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting his nemesis to leap from the mists at any moment. The thought sent a chill down Clara's spine, causing her to pick up her pace, determination glistening in her wide eyes. Holmes's mind was ablaze with possibilities, drawing connections between the information they had gleaned and the looming danger that pressed in upon them. "Watson," he managed between breaths, "if Damien seeks to seize control of the estate's legacy through fear, we must find a way to turn the tides." "But how, Holmes?" Watson replied, his breath visible in the cold air, clinging to each word as they neared the wrought iron gates of the manor. "What do we have that he does not?" "More than you think," Holmes murmured, his keen gaze lingering on the imposing structure, looming through the fog. "We have the music box, and with it, we hold the key to Edgar's destiny." His eyes darted toward Clara, who clutched the velvet pouch around her neck, the tiny key now a symbol of her connection to Edgar's secrets, and the force propelling them toward the denouement of their quest. As they approached the grand entrance, the silence was deafening. In stark contrast to the frenetic pulse of the streets beyond, the Hargrove estate lay dormant and cavernous. Thick shadows leapt from the flickering gaslights, offering no respite from the atmosphere, heavy with foreboding. "We need to act quickly," Holmes declared, entering the hall. "If we can unlock the hidden vault within the music box, we may discover the truth before Damien can destroy us." The deliberate ticking of the imposing grandfather clock in the corner punctuated his words, reminding them that time was a precious commodity, shrinking fast. Holmes approached the music box, its polish dull under the grim light. "There's a mechanism here," he whispered, fingers gliding delicately over the carvings. Suddenly, a faint inscription, barely visible under layers of dust, caught his eye. "Notes of the past shall unlock the hidden future." "Holmes, it sounds like a clue," Clara breathed, spellbound by the mystique of strange words. "Exactly," he replied, excitement threading through his voice. "We must play the melody sequence that Edgar cherished so deeply." He turned the ornate wind-up key, setting the music box aglow as it began to play a haunting refrain of notes. Each sound twirled through the air, dancing with memories like specters returning from the dead. "Holmes, listen!" Watson exclaimed, his eyes widening in recognition. "It's the tune Edgar played during our last visit, the one he described as bearing the weight of his family's grim legacy." Holmes nodded, engrossed in the melody as it spiraled toward a climax. But suddenly he shifted from wonder to sharp concentration, recognizing the clues hidden within the overlapping notes. "Watson, do you hear how each section breaks distinctly? It is as if he structured the melody to reflect his conflicts, the strife between him and Damien." The crescendo filled the room, and with it came a haunting image, the silhouette of a desperate man struggling against the shadows of his past. Clara's eyes shimmered with understanding. Edgar sought to keep his secrets close, linking his life's chaos to this music. As the last notes faded into silence, Holmes's gaze fell on the clock's face, a revelation igniting in his mind. Time itself intertwines with the estate's legacy. We must find the hidden chamber that Edgar referenced. Its seams are hidden, driven by more than mere notes. Just then, another crash broke their concentration. The library door swung open, flinging Damien into the room, the fury of a tempest incarnate. "You've stolen my birthright, Holmes," he shouted, his hands curling around the candlestick, a gruesome weapon, glimmering with intent. "Hold, Damien. Consider what you do," Holmes countered, positioning himself between the enraged heir and Clara. "Your greed blinds you to what truly lies within the family legacy. You may benefit by revealing your knowledge." "Knowledge? What do you know, Holmes?" "Nothing but riddles wrapped in soft words," Damien roared, but for a fleeting moment, uncertainty cracked the facade of his rage. "Correct," Holmes pressed, "but it is the truth we uncover that will determine the future of the Hargrove name, not the will to silence that which you fear." Damien hesitated, his grip faltering on the candlestick. "You'll find no sympathy here. Edgar was a fool. He believed in magic and song. I will not become another slave to the shadows he conjured." With a sudden burst of movement, Damien lunged forward, intent on attacking. But Holmes maneuvered swiftly, sending him crashing into the desk, rattling tomes from their creaking shelves. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected touch of light revealed itself. A drawer flung open, spilling out papers and a small object into the unfolding storm. Holmes plucked the item from the floor, a small, intricately engraved silver plate with a cryptic message on the back, partially concealed under a layer of dust. "It appears our not-so-harmless heir has left us another clue," Holmes observed, the thrill of deduction coiling in his voice. "This may hold the last answer we seek, the key to Edgar's will." But as he raised it to the gaslight for a clearer view, the electricity of revelation coursed through him like a strike of lightning. The inscription read, "Only when the final chord fades shall the truth be unveiled." "Holmes, what does it mean?" Clara's voice trembled, the gravity of their predicament weighing heavy. "I fear," Holmes said, the urgency ringing through his words, "the truth rests hidden until the clock itself strikes. We have unwittingly pitted ourselves against time." Their collective horror morphed as a sudden cacophony erupted, a series of chimes beating through the clock, reverberating with each echo like a calling drum. "Run!" Holmes commanded, the urgency in his voice igniting their flight instincts. As they bolted for the door, Clara's heart raced with an unspeakable fear. The essence of the manor seemed to conspire against them, shadows swirling and whispering hidden truths. Just as they reached the threshold, the clock chimed its final note. With a resounding thud, the estate shuddered, and an ominous creak rang out from deep inside the very walls they had come to know. The clock struck midnight. Chapter 11. Threads of Deception. The clock's final chime echoed through the tense air, reverberating within the very foundation of the Hargrove estate, the sound lingering as if the mansion itself held its breath in anticipation. In that moment, the walls shuddered, revealing a full layer of secrets pulsing within the house's core. "Holmes, what was that?" Clara gasped, her breath catching. Watson, still reeling from the violent confrontation with Damien, exchanged a worried glance with Holmes. "We need to move," Holmes's voice sliced through the fog of uncertainty. "There's something in this house that has awakened, something powerful, and we are ill-prepared if we linger." As the last echoes of the clock faded into the still night, Holmes turned sharply toward the staircase looming before them, its imposing silhouette beckoning them into the depths above. They ascended, the stairs, the old wood creaking beneath their heavy footfalls. Clara felt her heart race, as if each step was another beat of an ominous drum echoing the dread within her soul. "Do you think there's a hidden chamber, like you said?" she asked, her voice tremulous. "Indeed, the music box suggests a connection to the manor's past, a nexus of memory and legacy," Holmes replied, determination illuminating his features. "Damien's motivations are penned in his family's history, interweaving with Edgar's tragic descent." As they reached the upper landing, Holmes paused before a grand door partially ajar, a heavy velvet drape swaying gently despite the stillness permeating the house. "This could be it," he murmured, eyes narrowing. He pushed the door wide, revealing a dimly lit drawing room adorned with faded silks and gilded frames, each picture seeming to glare with the weight of untold stories. "What a haunting room," Watson observed, feeling as if he had stepped through the echoes of Time, the dim flicker of a nearby candle casting erratic shadows across the ornate moldings. It feels alive with memories. Not all memories are benign, my dear Watson, Holmes said, moving deeper into the room. They carry with them the threads of deception, fabric woven through with hidden truths. His keen eyes inspected the various artifacts strewn about the chamber, each suggesting a connection to the past. Holmes, over here, Clara called, excitement tinged with trepidation. She was crouched next to a library table, where a tiny brass key lay half hidden beneath a pile of dusty manuscripts. Could this be another clue? Holmes knelt beside her, examining the object closely. A key, he murmured, his brow furrowing. Yet this does not seem to match any of the locks we've encountered. Curious. He turned it over in his fingers, his mind racing. But why would it have been discarded here? The choice of location suggests intent. Someone has left it intentionally, perhaps as bait. Standing up, he glanced towards Watson, who had begun to flip through the yellowed pages of a nearby book. What have you found, old friend? It appears to be Edgar's journal, Watson answered, his lively curiosity rekindled. Though the ink has almost faded, I can make out bits. His fear of his own family's legacy, a reference to the hidden room within the estate. Edgar believed that the very walls of this house held the key to his salvation, Holmes mused, piecing together the fragments. And yet, he fell victim to its shadows. But where lies but the truth? As Clara thumbed through the worn journal, she suddenly gasped. Holmes, look! There's a passage about Damien, an accusation that he intended to seize control of Edgar's estate and manipulate it for his own gain. Holmes's eyes glittered with revelation, a calculating glint shimmering as he spoke. Ah, ambition and avarice, twin driving forces among the Hargroves. But why would Damien risk so much attention by conspiring against his brother? Could it be merely greed, or is there something deeper that binds him to the shadows? Before Watson could respond, a loud noise erupted from below. The unmistakable shattering of glass, followed by desperate footsteps, racing through the hallways. It seems we are no longer alone, Holmes said, his voice dropping to a whisper. We must remain vigilant. If Damien is on our tail, we will soon discover the truth of his intentions. Clara's eyes widened in fear as the sounds grew nearer. What do? We confront the truth head-on, Holmes declared, his voice steady, yet imbued with urgency. We cannot allow fear to dictate our actions. We will use everything at our disposal. Together, they moved to the room's only window, seeking refuge from the impending storm outside. The thick fog enveloped their view, casting a surreal pallor across the dim street below, rendering visibility near impossible. But just as Holmes peered into that dismal shroud, something glimmered, not from the street, but within the room itself. Her heart pounding, Clara pointed to the mantel. There, in that frame, another portrait of Edgar. Holmes's gaze sharpened. Of course, the family portraits, their artistry concealing more than mere likeness. They may hold the clue to the hidden room. They hurried towards it, examining the intricate detailing. Edgar stood with a proud smile, but it was the eyes, clouded with a hint of sorrow, that transfixed Clara. Holmes, what if Edgar's expression signifies more? What if he concealed secrets just beneath the surface? Quite astute, Clara, Holmes replied, his fingers brushing the frame delicately. Images can mask intent. Watch closely. As he pulled the portrait gently, a low grinding sound filled the air. The mantel began to shift, revealing a narrow door, hidden cunningly behind the artifice. Holmes, what lies beyond? Clara pressed, excitement igniting her spirits even amid an ever-looming peril. Truth and deception converge in the shadows, Holmes replied, stepping closer, determination unwavering. We are but steps away from uncovering the final revelation. As he pushed the hidden door open, darkness spilled forth, swallowing sound and light. Behind them, the hurried footsteps had grown louder, echoing menacingly in the humid silence. Just as Clara took a step toward the threshold, a rush of air from an unseen hand slammed the portrait shut, sealing off their chance to uncover the estate's final secret. Cries of fury erupted from below as Damien's voice resonated through the corridor, a promise of confrontation. You can't escape the truth, Holmes, he bellowed, his tone dripping with rage. Tonight, the shadows will claim their own. With no choice but to meet the confrontation head-on, Holmes turned to Clara and Watson, his resolve as unyielding as the darkness before them. We must face whatever comes, for the echoes of Edgar's legacy demand to be released. Hold tight, for we are in the very heart of deception. As the figures of Damien and his monstrous ambition threatened to engulf them, Holmes prepared to stand unwavering in the face of turmoil, the threads of fate tightening around them as the final act beckoned. Chapter 12. The Final Tick. As the heavy portrait clicked shut, sealing them in darkness, a palpable tension hung in the air. Every breath felt heavy with the weight of impending doom. The sound of Damien's furious footsteps reverberated through the corridors of the Hargrove estate, a relentless reminder that their sanctuary had transformed into a trap. Clara, her heart pounding in time with the clock's ominous ticking, shot a glance at Holmes, who stood motionless, his brow furrowed in thought. "Holmes," she uttered, her voice barely a whisper. "What are we to do? If we remain trapped here, Damien will find us." "Patience, Clara," Holmes replied, eyes narrowing as he surveyed their surroundings. In moments of apparent despair, the path to clarity often shows itself. Listen. He held his finger to his lips. Clara and Watson leaned closer, straining against the silence that enveloped them. Amidst the eerie stillness, a deeper shudder echoed through the walls, an irregular pulse, almost like a heartbeat. Holmes turned abruptly, his gaze locking onto one of the dusty bookshelves, a glimmer of realization igniting within him. "It emanates from there, I am certain." He stepped toward the ancient shelves, meticulously examining the worn spines. "Books often conceal more than mere word," he murmured, running his fingers over the bindings until he stopped at a particular volume, its title nearly obscured by age and neglect. Pulling it free, he discovered it was a ledger, its pages yellowed and crumbling. "Holmes, what is it?" Watson asked as he joined him. "Family records, my dear Watson," Holmes declared, his voice swelling with fervor. "An inventory of the Hargrove possessions. Let's see if it conceals more than just their estate." But before he could continue, a fresh burst of thunder rumbled in the distance, drowning his words beneath its cacophony. Clara flinched, her heart racing as the shadows deepened around them. Just then, a dreadful realization struck Holmes like a bolt. "The ledger," he pointed. "It isn't just memorabilia. It is the key to Edgar's secrets." Clara peered over his shoulder as he flipped through the brittle leaves. "There!" he exclaimed, spotting a passage he recognized. "An inventory of musical instruments, including, a condition for the bequest." "What do you mean?" Watson asked, puzzled by Holmes's excitement. "The final chord shall dictate the fortunes of this estate," Holmes read aloud, tracing a point with his finger that punctuated the statement. It is clear Edgar had intended to safeguard something vital, what he had always held dear, however intangible. Clara's eyes widened with understanding. "So, the music, it's not merely a symphony of memories, but a literal key to his legacy." A sudden crash resounded from the staircase just beyond the door, a stunning crescendo of chaos that set their nerves afire. "We've little time," Holmes hissed, stuffing the ledger into his coat before rounding back toward the hidden portrait. "The chamber may not only contain secrets, but the very culmination of Edgar's life and death. If we exit here, we must move swiftly and hide." As Holmes pressed against the door, intent on unveiling the secrets beyond the threshold, their surroundings grew increasingly sinister. The atmosphere thickened, shadows dancing as if alive, beckoning them into the inky abyss of the unknown. With a swift shove, he opened it wide, and they stepped into an adjoining room. It was fraught with antique furniture, yet its focus lay on a spectacular grand piano, dark wood and gold accents gleaming even in the dim light. "Holmes, it's beautiful," Clara breathed, her eyes fixed on the instrument, a sense of nostalgia mingling with trepidation. "Indeed," he replied, glancing about for any hint of danger. "This could very well be the heart of Edgar's final performance. We need to integrate the melody sequence." But firstly, he leaned closer to the piano, running his fingers over its keyboard, his expression lighting up. Each key is labeled with engraved names, embedded for memory, quite analogous to Edgar's story. Each name carries a weight, a possible connection to those who played a role in his life. Could it lead us to Damien? Clara asked, her voice pulsing with excitement and fear. Potentially. Holmes turned toward the front of the piano to reveal a small compartment that was partially ajar. He gently opened it to discover a stack of blank sheets, music sheets. Perfect, Watson declared, his enthusiasm growing. If Edgar meant for the music itself to lead us through this web of deceit, we must play. The violent echo of footsteps now thundered nearer, flooding the corridor with their foreboding rhythm. We have no more time, Holmes urged, the urgency spearing through their hearts like a bolt of lightning. Clara, you said you could use the box's melody sequence to unlock the truth. Do so. As she positioned her fingers over the keys, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. A chill swept through the room, as if the walls themselves were leaning in, anticipating the very truth they'd long sought. Clara played cautiously, the air thickening with each note while Holmes and Watson stood vigil, awaiting the response from their hidden adversary. But as the haunting melody flowed, the clock's ticking morphed to an irregular rhythm, rapid and erratic. Exhausted by the pressing tension, Clara faltered momentarily, the echo of her music hanging in the air. Suddenly, the final note resonated, spiraling into an unearthly silence. Edward's final chord indeed, Holmes murmured, deductions tumbling through his mind like leaves in a gale. And then it happened. The grandfather clock, seated dominantly in the mew on a far corner, struck its final hour, a resounding clang echoing through the air. With the last stroke, the piano shuddered, flickering lights above dimming momentarily, and before them lay an unexpected compartment falling open, its contents gleaming within the newfound twilight. Holmes, the spirit of Edgar lives, Clara shrieked, as a small silver key, identical to the one found earlier, tumbled from the compartment along with a sheet of yellowed parchment, a cryptic message garlanded across the page. Yet even as Holmes reached for it, the door burst open, Damien's furious figure filling the entrance, eyes aflame with rage. "You'll find no answers here," he bellowed, but the tension held the air hostage, a moment that teetered on the precipice of chaos. "Holmes, what do we do?" Clara cried, dread curling around her. "Confront the shadows, my dear," he breathed, raising the parchment above the chaos that swirled like a storm. "For the very essence of our quest lies in what we uncover next." As Damien lunged forward, the tension exploded into a chaos of sound. And just as a clash was inevitable, the parchment slipped from Holmes's grasp, unfurling in the dark air and catching the flickering glow of a gaslight. One word glaring through the shadows. Revelation. And with that, the stage was set. Their journey spiraled toward its ultimate finale, while the clock persistently ticked down towards destiny.